Welcome back, it's me, Lou, and I'm here today with another action figure unboxing and review. And today we are showcasing this. This came out some months ago. This is the Gamerverse Marvel Avengers Iron Man vs. Taskmaster 2-pack. This came out, I want to say, roughly around the same time as the new Avengers game that was done by, I believe it was Square Enix. I remember I downloaded it the day it launched on the PlayStation, and I told myself, I'm gonna play this. And during that period of the quarantine lockdown phase for those few months, I kind of had more time on my hands, and I thought I would get around to playing the game. But then work picked up again, and it got busy, and I lost the amount of free time I had to play the video game, so that kind of went on the back burner. But I did take notice of the figures that were on the shelves, and I bought a couple of them. But I'm kind of a mint on card collector, and I just bought the ones I wanted, and they went up on top of the, I kept them in the boxes and hung them on the wall. And now that the game's been out for many months now, and these figures are kind of seeing their way out of the stores, I decided to pick this one up because, for one, I like this design of Iron Man. This is very reminiscent of the Marvel Now iteration of Iron Man from years ago in the comic books, where he kind of wore the black and gold armor. And then there was a Taskmaster figure that came with this. I remember the first time I saw this in the stores, I wasn't super impressed. The sculpting looked a little bit soft, didn't really look as detailed, but the Iron Man is what I really wanted. And with the last few weeks, with me picking up the new Marvel Avengers Mech Strike figures, such as these, I love these. These are the bargain, like $8 Marvel figures. Buying this, I couldn't resist it anymore because I wanted this Iron Man to kind of go along with these. I like the idea of having the black and gold armor in the same scale as the budget line. And then I thought I'd just review the Taskmaster while I'm at it, because the new Black Widow movie is finally going to be released after being delayed for such a long time. And even though this is based off of the Gamerverse version of Taskmaster, I think it, at least warrants a small little review in comparison. So looking at the package, I like the design of the Gamerverse stuff. The white's really striking. It really stands out from the Marvel Legends stuff. This 2-pack's cool. I like the shape of it. They're not just giving you a regular, squarish rectangle kind of box. It has 1, 2, 3, 4. It has 6 sides to it. It looks cool. You have all the different characters from the game. You have the Gamerverse Thor, the Iron Man, Widow, Hulk, Ms. Marvel, and Cap. And on the back, I feel kind of shortchanged with the back because I think they're all the same, regardless of which figure you buy. It's just, the lineup. You have a portrait of all the main characters. It'd be nice if they actually gave you a bio and description of the characters you're getting in relation to the video game itself. But the art is pretty to look at. So, let's take a look at this and check out these cool figures. Alright, so you have the tray, and one thing I thought was kind of cool is that inside the tray there's the background beside them, this little insert. So you can either toss this away into your recycle bin, of course, because it's made of cardboard and it always helps to give back to Mother Nature. Or you could use this as a nice display piece, whether you want to put it in the background of your detail for your shelf, or even just leave it flat and place the characters on top of it. It's a nice little add-on. And here we have Iron Man and Taskmaster in the tray. And it looks like we have a couple of accessories. We have the blast effects for Iron Man, and Taskmaster has his shield. So, I really want to review the Iron Man, but let's do Taskmaster first. Okay, first impressions upon taking Taskmaster out. The color scheme. Alright, so His color scheme is, I mean, for a villain, I don't know, terrorist, bounty hunter sort of character, assassin, its color scheme isn't very striking. The mask, just looking at it kind of reminds me more so of like Casey Jones. I'm not too keen on some of the Gamerverse costume choices and the designs in the video game. They don't really scream heroic to me. Some of them look more utilitarian and more practical and real world like, which isn't bad. But I think you kind of lose that dynamic which makes superheroes so special. You know, I just don't want a guy that's just wearing tactical gear with a hood on. You know, he needs to feel like a supervillain. And this one, the colors aren't very deep. The blue or purple could be punched up a little bit darker. But if this is based off the video game, and if this is as close to the video game what it looks like, okay, I could deal with that. One thing I do like is that it has a hard, good plastic cape. I'm not a big fan of the cloth stuff, although there is some drawbacks to that. I'm glad that the cape isn't very long. You know, it stops a little past the knee level, so it's not going to get in the way if he's just standing there. And it allows some, you know, kick back a little without worrying about this getting in the way. Standard fare articulation for the budget figures, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, you could do a lot with them. It's just minus, I think, the waist swivel and the ab crunch and the thigh cut. But otherwise, you know, very, very posable. And if you're a kid, you know, you're gonna, if I'm a kid, if I'm 8 years old, I'd love something like this. But I mean, aesthetics aside, it is a decent figure. I love the budget Marvel figures. Now, they can't hold a candle to the Marvel Legend ones, but they're not supposed to. You know, this is a very specific demographic these are aimed at. The shield, a little lackluster. The detail's very minimal on the inside. You see, like, unlike, so here's the Mech Strike Captain America. You took a look at his shield, and they detail it out the wazoo. All sorts of cool stuff. But on this shield, very, very basic. You just get a couple of rivets, a couple of different layers of metal, but not a whole lot going on. The shield, unfortunately, doesn't, there's not much of a clip to it. All there is this tiny peg, which you can plug into his forearm, like so. You know, so it's a decent figure, Taskmaster. If I was to rate this guy numerically, I'd probably say a 6 or 7. And I'm not just saying that because, you know, it's a budget figure. I think for a budget figure, for what it is, it does everything it should. But aesthetically, it could do a lot more. It's unfortunate that he comes with a mold of a gun in a holster, but he doesn't come with a gun itself. So that's kind of pointless. But he does have this shield, and that's pretty cool. Everything about the figure is nice. The sculpting is crisp on the harnesses. The boots especially, these are really nice. The sculpt on the boots and the knee pads. Now for the detail here, as you'd expect, since it's a budget figure, in terms of the paint apps, they're going to paint the harnesses on the front, but then once you get around the back, they're kind of just the bare plastic, except for the belt. Yeah, so overall, it's a decent figure. Like I said, I wanted the 2-pack more so for the Iron Man, but, you know, to have another villain, it doesn't hurt. I think with, like, most toy lines, there's always going to be more heroes plentiful than the villains. And in this case, I think the only villains they're giving us in the budget Gamerverse Avengers line is just this guy, and I think maybe the Abomination. I might be wrong on that, but those are the 2 that come to my mind. And it'd be nice if they gave us more. Like I said, I haven't played the game, so I don't know what other villains occupy that Gamerverse world. But, you know, it always helps to have more villains for the Avengers to fight, especially if you're a little kid. So, decent figure. Oh, and while we're at it, I actually pulled out some other Taskmasters we could look at. Alright, so we have this Taskmaster. This is the traditional comic book looking Taskmaster. This is a Marvel Legends. This is the more premium figure. This is the one that you're going to pay like $20 for at first. I'm not sure how much it is now, because it's been a couple of years since this figure came out. And if you collect Marvel Legends, you know how they kind of skyrocket in prices. Especially like when a character either re-debuts in a comic book, or if it's going to appear in a movie, you know, all of a sudden there's a clamor to want to, you know, get the figure, especially if you passed up on it. This version of Taskmaster is the one that lives on in my mind forever. Especially it was an issue of Amazing Spider-Man. I want to say maybe it was 308. And there's this beautiful, iconic scene of Taskmaster drawn by Todd McFarlane as he's emerging in a cemetery, and he's coming out behind these grave markers. And it's done in that traditional Todd McFarlane style that he can only draw, and this character just looks amazing. And I'm kind of convinced that Spawn or even Taskmaster was partially... I mean, if you look at the Todd McFarlane Spawn character, it's a character he designed when he was younger. But if you look at his iteration of Taskmaster that he drew in Amazing Spider-Man, it looks like when he redesigned Spawn, it looks like it might have... Some of these design elements might have carried over into his modern representation of Spawn when he created Spawn in the 90s. Or at least when he revitalized Spawn in the 90s. Because it was a character he drew when he was, like, I think, like a teenager or a kid. But this is a cool character. I always loved Taskmaster in the comics because he had a little bit of everything. You know, he had the skull, which reminds me of Skeletor. He had the orange cape, which kind of reminded me of maybe like Hobgoblin. He was a villain. He had, like, in the 90s, he had all the pouches and holsters and all that kind of stuff that the heroes and villains wore during that time period, like Cable. He had the Buccaneer boots and the gloves. And I say this all the time in my videos. I'm very nostalgic for that period of time. So, you know, if you put this guy here, you could kind of see, you know, some similarities. You know, they have the hood, but, you know, of course, nowadays we're so concerned of making things seem real that this guy has a more realistic aesthetic with this skull-like mask, as opposed to having a skull face. And then we have this version of Taskmaster. I believe... Alright, so this is a Marvel Legends also. And I think this came packaged, but I don't think it said Taskmaster specifically. It said Mercenaries on the front of the box, but then when you looked on the back, it labeled it as Taskmaster, and I think you could head swap it. I think it had a different head sculpt. And I want to say the other figure, was it Crossbones, that was in the Mercenaries subline? I can't remember. Well, anyhow, this is Taskmaster. It's a little bit more contemporary, a little bit more modern. It still retains the skull appearance. Now, I'm not familiar with the more recent iterations of the character, so I don't know if this is just like a skull mask. Unlike this one, where this looks like a skull face altogether. So, you know, he still retains the hood, which is cool. But, you know, bring him into the modern era. He has the holsters, he has the guns, he has, you know, they kind of cut down on his pouches. He doesn't have as many crazy pouches and straps as he did before. And the white's kind of pulled back. He has a little bit of white on his chest, but a lot more silver and armor. And this is a cool design. And which brings us to the most recent iteration of Taskmaster. And it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of the character. This is as he appears in the new Black Widow movie, which has yet to be released. I like this figure, but I'm also conflicted because every time I look at this figure, I don't see Taskmaster. I always see Deathstroke, the Terminator from DC Comics. This looks more like Deathstroke out of maybe the Batman Arkham Asylum games, and Arkham Knight, Arkham City, and whatnot. You know, this is very tactical, super armored. This looks like the kind of guy that could take on a small little army by himself. And the helmet bothers me because it looks more like some sort of weird paintball helmet than, you know, it has skullish features like the gritted teeth, but it has a visor and goggles, and he still retains the hood, which is cool. I kind of wish they did a better balance of giving me something like this and this. So this is the guy that I'm always gonna be very fond of. This guy comes in a close second. Now, this is speaking aesthetically. This guy comes in a close second. And these two, I think, these two are closer related. They're, you know, these two are more like cousins. This is like Taskmaster Light, and this is like Taskmaster Heavy. But falling back on the figure that we're here to showcase, yeah, this is Taskmaster. He's cool. If you're a kid, you're gonna love him. If you're like me, you might be on the fence about him, but the Gamerverse line of figures is kind of very small to begin with, and it's nice to get a villain like this. So let's put him aside, and let's bring out the figure I'm excited about. So this is Iron Man from the Gamerverse. Now, I'm not sure. I haven't played. Like I said, I haven't played the game yet, so I don't know how accurate or in what capacity this character exists. But the figure's cool. I love Iron Man in the black and gold color scheme. It's very reminiscent of his time in the comic books when Marvel had a certain initiative. It was called Marvel Now, and they were trying to take, like DC at the time, they were doing the New 52. DC wanted to bring DC into the modern age, and they kind of retconned some of the characters' backstories and made things more modern and cool and hip. Batman and Superman finally dropped wearing their underwear on the outside of their tights, and it was the dawn of a new era for superheroes. So Marvel wanted to jump on board and revitalize and take a somewhat more modern approach on their characters also, but they were smart and they didn't want to completely ignore the back history of their universe. So instead of like rebranding it and this, rebooting the universe altogether, it was just called Marvel Now. They're taking all the Marvel superheroes we knew and love. They still recognized the timeline and the continuities, but they just wanted to bring everything more into the modern age and make everything feel contemporary. And at the same time, I think they were very, at least in my opinion, they were successful with it. I remember reading the Avengers book, and I think those were written by Jonathan Hickman. And I thought those stories were amazing. The Avengers felt like superheroes that took on matters on a global scale. It got to the point where they were taking on matters in terms of like a universal scale. They're at odds with like alien forces, and it was awesome. They brought Cannonball and Sunspot into the fold. Characters like Manifold took the spotlight, and I think like Smasher. And they brought back the Smart Hulk, if I remember correctly, which I love. And Iron Man, he was wearing the black and gold armor, so it felt more sophisticated, it felt more modern. The characters, they were cool without it seeming too forced, and it was awesome. I loved this version of Iron Man because at the time, Iron Man was becoming so iconic because of the MCU, and it was cool for the comics to take a break away from the traditional red and gold Iron Man and just do this. This was awesome. So as I want to compare this guy to the budget line, let's examine him more closely. First off, his sculpting is beautiful. The sculpting on his chest and torso, the detailing, it's awesome. The aesthetics very futuristic. The back detail's awesome. His spinal column has these nice details sculpted in. The range of motion is what you expect from these figures. The shoulders, the arms, the swivels, the head. Unfortunately, the head has no, can't really tilt up. So, if you're a kid and you want to make him fly, he's going to have to look down. Now, in terms of the scale, let's set this guy down, and let's compare him to the current Mech Strike line. And if we look at them, yeah, he falls well within this line. His sculpting is a little bit more detailed, and you can tell it's a notch higher than these. But if you're collecting the budget line and you want to have a budget Hall of Armors, this is a cool toy to have. It's a great Iron Man. And he comes with the blast effects that we get with almost every Iron Man figure. And I've talked about these before. So you can either plug him into his hands for a pulsar blast, or plug him into his feet so it looks like he's flying away. Yeah, I like this figure. He's cool. If I had to rate him numerically, I'd probably give him, my first thought is 7 or 8, definitely. You know, despite the fact that he's not super articulated, but that doesn't matter because he's not meant to be. He's meant to fall into the more of the kitty line, but I think for a kitty figure, his sculpting is on par with a Marvel Legends figure. He just doesn't have the proper scale or the articulation. But I really think in terms of detail, this guy could carry his own against the Marvel Legends just because it's sculpted beautifully. Yeah, so overall, I do recommend this 2-pack. Oh yeah, before I forget, there's this guy. I almost forgot to compare him. So this is the Gamerverse Iron Man from the 2-pack, which I'm gushing over. It looks like his iteration from the Marvel Now comics. And I forgot to bring out this. Confession, this part of the video right now is edited and cut in later. After I talked about this guy, I pulled out Taskmaster again, and that was the end of the video. And then I realized I had this guy sitting off to the side because I wanted to compare him to the Gamerverse 2-pack. So this is the actual Marvel Legends Iron Man donning the black and gold armor, very inspired by the Marvel Now version of Iron Man. And I believe this is just a simple repaint of a previous Iron Man. So this is the more premium Marvel Legends. You get all the bells and whistles of their articulation that you come to expect from this line of toys, which is superb. He moves and bends in every way possible. The sculpting's detailed. His shoulders, you know, there's room for it to move around. It's beautiful. So this is the premium figure. This came out some years ago. And I want to compare it with this budget figure that came out maybe like 4 months ago, 4 or 6 months, or even further back. So, this is the Gamerverse 2-pack, and here is the Marvel Legends, very inspired by Marvel Now. This one has a more actual black. This is more of a black color. This one's kind of more of like a gunmetal, smokier. It's kind of a more. This is definitely more on the side of gray. But if you just look at them and compare the sculpting, you know, for a budget figure. Now this is in the 2-pack. I think the 2-pack's like $19 for 2 figures, whereas Marvel Legends, they retail for like $20 for just 1 figure. Now, even though this guy doesn't have the articulation, as I mentioned before, I think sculpting wise, you know, he could like definitely hold his own against this. He might not have the ab crunches and the swivels and all that, but if you look at the sculpting, it's so crisp. They're deep cuts. It's a very unique design. It's not just a simple, I don't know, it might be a repaint of the standard one, but it looks wonderful. It's a beautiful figure. And it's shorter than the Marvel Legends because, you know, this is the budget line falls in around that 5.5-inch scale, whereas these are more like true to form 6-inch figures, the Marvel Legends. But yeah, this is great. Wonderful figure. So yeah, I got a chance to compare the Marvel Legends one with the budget one, and let's try to re-edit this so it's back to where we left off. And grab them now while you still can. The game has been out for a while now, and last I looked, there aren't too many Gamerverse figures left on the shelves outside of this 2-pack. Ms. Marvel's kind of peg warming, and so is that Hulk Abomination 2-pack. So, thank you again for stopping by and checking out my video. I hope you walk away with this a little bit more informed. And if you didn't have an interest in these toys, I hope you do now. As I said before, I was kind of lukewarm to them, but realizing that these figures aren't going to be on the shelves forever, I wanted this one a lot, and I think it's well worth the price of admission. This guy has some shortcomings, but it doesn't hurt to have another villain in your rogue gallery. So, my name is Lou, and thank you again, and I'll see you soon.